Okay, Danny. You were known as a fairly hard man in generally in football. Do you think there's still room for that in the modern game?
Sadly, the game has changed to such a degree that the way I played the game is almost archaic now. You know, it's like anything. You know, evolution changes things. The game is now far more technical, quicker at that level, far more skillful than it was when I was there. And I crossed several generations. You know, when I first started playing, you could pass the ball back to the goalkeeper. So I've been fortunate. You know, I've seen it all the way through. But you know, for me, the way I played the game, you know, no, simply you cannot get away with playing like that anymore.
Do you think pace is now considered a more important commodity than anything else, say like strength or maybe even a basic reading of the game?
No, I think one of the most important things in this day and age, you have to be an athlete. Not necessarily pace, not necessarily the ability to be very, very quick. You look at some of the great players that are still playing, the likes of Paul Scholes, Pirlo, Ryan Giggs. You know, experience can make up for an awful lot. You know, positional sense and also technical ability. You know, you look at a lot of the Barcelona players. You know, they're not lightning quick, but they are athletes. You know, players have to look after themselves and they have to be able to get around the pitch.
Going back to some of your club career, explain what it was like to be at Leeds during the financial meltdown of the club.
Well, Leeds was great for me. I had 5 fantastic seasons at Leeds. Of course, you know, we had a bit of a roller coaster. Obviously, European football, Champions League semi-finals, topped the Premier League for a while, and then of course it all went horribly wrong. We had too many players. On too big a money. We had probably 25 internationals, all earning high wages, and it simply wasn't sustainable. And then of course when we failed to make it into the Champions League, we finished 5th that season. You know, the money started to dry up, and you know, financial meltdown after that was inevitable. You know, the club gambled on us making the Premier League. Having said that, we were top of the league on January the 1st, 3 points clear, and we finished 5th. So, you know, managers and players have to take some responsibility for that.
What was it like as a player to have that insecurity around the club?
Well, it was difficult for me. I'd gone on loan. I'd been farmed out to Middlesbrough, really to get me off the wages. And that was the season they got relegated. And that was a tough season for Leeds. A lot of players had left the club. Peter Reid was sacked halfway through. Eddie Gray was then put in charge, and you know, trying to bail out a sinking ship, if you like, and it wasn't possible. I then went back to the club for that spell when they were, you know, just been relegated, and it was tough. You know, all those great players that we had. You know, the Robbie Keanes, the Robbie Fowlers, Alan Smith, Rio Ferdinand, Gary Kelly, myself, Ian Hart, Nigel Martin, Paul Robinson had all left the football club. You know, and suddenly it was a shadow of its former self, and it's tough because as a player, you know, you do feel slightly responsible. At the end of the day, we're the people going out on the pitch. You know, we didn't deliver. You know, yes, there were other people to blame. You know, the manager especially as well. But you know, it's not just about the board. It wasn't the board that just got it wrong. You know, it's a culmination of things.
You mentioned loan spells there. You had quite a few of them in your career. What's that like to do with a player, just not having that security of a long-term contract?
Well, the first loan spell I went was literally to Middlesbrough, and I went obviously out on loan because Leeds needed me off the wage bill. I had a good season at Middlesbrough. I think we finished 8th or 9th in the table and won the Carling Cup. So that was a good spell for me. But that was the first sort of, I think, season of loan deals. And of course, you could then, at that time, you were allowed to play against your own club. I played the first game against Leeds, which in my view was a little bit because I wanted to play against Peter Reid, who'd got rid of me effectively. But then I refused to play in the game at Ellen Road. You know, when Leeds were struggling, I thought, you know, I'm on loan, I can't play against my parent club, and you know, possibly send them down, which inevitably happened. But no, I went on loan really to get fitness back. After that, you know, obviously I went to Manchester City. Unfortunately, I broke my leg. And coming back from that after 6 months out, you know, when you've got players in front of you, you need to get match fitness. So I was more than happy to go out on loan, and then unfortunately came back, got another stress fracture in my leg, and came back from that. And you know, after being out for a couple of years, you've been replaced. You know, that's how it works. So then really, you either play reserve team football, or you go out and try and do something at a first team somewhere, and that's what I did, and that was the reason for the loans really.
You mentioned the League Cup win. Why do you think the League Cup is so undervalued by Premier League clubs at the moment?
I'm not sure really. For me, unless you've won the League Cup several times, it's not something that you can dismiss. You know, when you look at it, you know, Manchester United, Arsenal, they've won the cup several times. You know, they have. It's more important, you know, to be in the Champions League financially. But more and more Premier League teams that haven't won the cup, that aren't challenging for the Premier League, are writing the competition off. You know, very, very early on. You know, in a game of, for those clubs at the lower end of the Premier League, especially, you know, it's only 38 games. You know, it's not that many. You know, you've only got 7 games to get to the final. You know, and possibly win a trophy, get yourself into Europe. I don't quite understand why teams do dismiss it as quickly as they do.
I mean, for you, you've done an awful lot of things in your career. Would you say that was, you know, an achievement like to equate with, say, playing in the Champions League at the Nou Camp or representing England?
Well, for me, obviously winning the Carling Cup as it was, for me winning the League Cup was the only medal I've won, effectively. You know, a big trophy. So, you know, it's massively important to me to have that day at Cardiff. You know, to win a trophy was monumental. I suppose secondly after that, the other trophy I won was here at Wembley in the playoff final, Charlton versus Sunderland, an amazing game. So yeah, they're 2 big things that stick in my mind. You know, they're 2 massive occasions. Of course, playing for your country, you know, tops that. You know, playing in the Champions League was fantastic, but we didn't win it. You know, winning is the ultimate. You know, that's what you expect as a footballer, and that's what you want. So, like I said, you know, I think it's vitally important. You know, all the cup competitions, and when I say here that players need a rest. You know, players are tired. You know, and I'm talking about those teams that only play 38 Premier League games, and then they play 2 or 3 cup games. I think, you know, when I was playing, I think I played 75 games one season. You know, you look at what the Man United players play. They often play more than 60 games. The players can deal with that. You know, fitness and tiredness shouldn't be an issue. And I think, you know, to win a cup, you ask the fans. You know, they'd love to win it, and the players, they'd love to win a trophy.
Go to your time at Manchester City. Your injury gave way to a young Mika Richards. Are you perhaps a little bit disappointed that he's not really pushed on and, you know, become the player everyone thought he would be?
Yeah, it's been really tough for Mika. He got into the side. Literally, just after I broke my leg, he was thrown into the team as a 16-year-old. I'd actually played with him in the reserves a few months before that. You know, really talented player, strong, powerful. It's difficult, you know, the game is all about opinions, and unfortunately for Mika, he has all the attributes. You know, he's skillful, he's strong, he's quick. I think what he's found difficult is he a right back or is he a centre half? He hasn't really nailed down the one position and said that's going to be mine. And he's been in and out of the side at Manchester City. He's been left out by sort of really the last 3 England managers. So it's been tough for him. He's got a lot of ability, still very, very young, but still has a great opportunity if he gets his head right, possibly picks one position, nails that position down. There's no reason why he can't get back in the England squad.
What was your relationship with Sven-Göran Eriksson? He took you to the World Cup, but then he also made you available for transfer at City.
It was interesting, obviously, for England. I didn't have too many conversations with Sven. You know, he was a very, very calm manager, very, very quiet. Obviously, gave him my debut. You know, pulled me into the squad, and I think, you know, from my point of view, you know, my England career was fairly successful. I don't think I ever let myself down, didn't let my country down. So, you know, it was good for me. And then, of course, you know, obviously didn't take me to Portugal, Euro 2004. Big disappointment, but, you know, these things happen in football. And then, of course, he became the City manager. And I actually probably had more respect for him when he became City manager, because working with him on a day-to-day basis, having more dialogue, having more conversation, I actually realised that he was a very, very intelligent guy. You know, knew his football inside out. We're still very, very quiet. You know, didn't shout, you know, didn't throw teacups, wasn't that type of manager at all. But I realised that, you know, he knew his football, you know, he knew his tactics, obviously, you know, spoke several different languages as well, a vast experience. And he was very, very honest with me. He'd brought in Charlie Corluka to play right back, because, you know, I'd been injured for a long time. I think he paid something like £8 million for him. And he was brilliant. He said, you know, he was completely honest and said, you know, he's going to play right back. You know, he's my #1 right back. You know, you're second. You'll be in the squad. You'll be on the bench. But I appreciate, you know, your career where you want to play first-team football. So can't let you go to a Premier League club. But if you want to go out and play on loan because you want to play, and I know you do, then that's fine. And I really appreciated that honesty from him.
Is there any reason you think why you seem to struggle in English football? City was mid-table. We didn't really do much with Leicester taking over them, and to a lesser extent, you had England's golden generation.
It's always difficult. The national team is always very, very difficult to manage. The expectations are so high, and I would say every single team in the Premier League plays in a different style. And when you equate that to Spain, to Germany, to Italy, generally the teams in those leagues play in the same way, play in the same style. So when the national team comes together, they're all used to playing a certain way. In England, we have such a diversity of mixes of styles and formations that when all the players come together, it's difficult. You know, you tend to put, you know, square pegs in round holes a lot of the time. Even though they're your best players, they're not necessarily playing in the best position they play for the club. So that's never easy. And golden generation or not, you know, it's always tough. And club football's difficult. You know, who's been successful? You know, Arsene Wenger's incredibly successful, but hasn't won a trophy for 7 years. You know, Sir Alex Ferguson didn't win a trophy last season. You know, Mourinho was here for a short time. It's very, very difficult to win anything in this country. You know, there's only one team that wins the league every season. You know, there's only one team that wins the cup. So the measure of success is very, very difficult. And if you don't get time, it's almost impossible. You know, to become a good manager at a club, to put things in place, you need 4 or 5 seasons before things start to filter through. And unfortunately, because of the financial climate, managers don't get that time anymore.
City in their current form, how far can they go? Do you think they can win, say, the Champions League within the next 3 years?
City's a really interesting one for me. Obviously, massive influx of money. We all know that, you know, they almost have a bottomless pit of cash to delve into. But obviously, the Arab owners are not daft, and they realise that the club has to be sustainable. And I think they've just curbed a little bit of spending in the last season or so. But yeah, they have fantastic players. But again, that just because you can buy the best players in the world doesn't mean that, you know, you're going to win everything. You know, it's a balance in that. You've got egos to manage, players to manage, and in this day and age, players have an entourage. You know, they have managers, they have agents, they have what else they have hairdressers or whatever they have. You know, you've got to manage. You're not managing a player. You're almost managing a business, you know, in terms of every single player. So gone are the days where it's just 11 players. You know, it's 11 players plus 4 other people, you know, for every player. So that's difficult. But City have great players, a good manager at the moment. Again, if he doesn't win the Champions League this season and doesn't win the Premier League.
Tell us about today's initiative. What brings you here today?
Well, I think obviously it's fantastic. Without referees, we would have no games. And at the top level, of course, referees are scrutinised, and it's a really, really tough job. But once you drop below that, you know, grassroots football, you know, from 7 years old up, you still got to have referees, and they still face the same and different challenges, and they need to be rewarded. Because if we don't have referees, you know, when I turn up and watch my kids on a Sunday morning, if there's no referee, there's no game. You know, and it's volunteers, it's parents, you know, dipping into that, you know, and doing the best that they can. So. One, you know, we're here to reward referees, you know, tell them they're doing a good job, you know, let them know that they're appreciated, and try and encourage more people to get involved.
And yeah, finally, why does footy matter to you?
Football's just the greatest game on the planet. It can be played by anybody, you know, simple as that. You just need a ball. You don't need any facilities. You know, you can play football anywhere. If you've got a ball, or even sometimes, you know, a made-up ball, you know, if something you can kick around, you know, then that's it. It's football for me is the most diverse sport played by any country in the world. You can play it anywhere. You know, it's the world game. You know, I'm not sure there's a country that doesn't play football. You know, at some level, and I think that's what it is. You know, it's because it can be played by everybody. It just brings everybody together. You know, it's a small round world created by a small round ball, really.